Hello and welcome to the No One Asked You podcast. I'm reading The Wheel of Time for the first time and sharing the experience with you. This is One Good Turn, The Eye of the World, and today I'm covering Chapter 25. We're back with Perrin. We get the sprouting seeds of that romance between Perrin and Egwene. Peregrine? Something like that. We get some travelers, some pacifist travelers, and a handful of really interesting moments. The three are traveling, the three and the wolves, rather, so 6? The 6 are traveling, and Perrin and Egwene are wondering about where the others are. And essentially, the rest of the pack are there. They're not so close as to become bothersome or alarming to humans should they run into them, but they are there and capable of being close enough should the need arise. There's a really wonderful interaction with Egwene regarding Bella again. When they had started out, Egwene insisted that everyone take a turn riding, and Perrin did not even bother to argue. "First turn is yours," he told her. She nodded. "And then you, Elias."
"My own legs are good enough for me,"
Elias said. He looked at Bella, and the mare rolled her eyes as if he were one of the wolves.
"Besides, I don't think she wants me riding her."
"That's nonsense. There is no point in being stubborn about it. The sensible thing is for everybody to ride sometimes. According to you, we have a long way still to go."
"I said no, girl."
Very interesting interaction here. So, the farther into this book I get, the less I like Egwene, which is more or less what I expected. There hasn't been like an overly large amount that she's done to make me overtly dislike her, but there have been some things such that on the gauge of like to dislike, it's not in the positive. It's not overwhelmingly in the negative, it's just not in the positive. But there is a notch toward the positive here, in the sense that I think that there is an attempt at equity, if you will. An attempt at caring, an attempt at being practical and pragmatic and thoughtful toward the concerns of others in the group. And I think that those are all likable qualities. I'm a sucker for a pragmatic character. So points to Egwene here. We've got a really wonderful bit of awe coming from Perrin, though, regarding Elias's response to it. She took a deep breath, and Perrin was wondering if she would succeed in bullying Elias the way she did him, when he realized she was standing there with her mouth open, not saying a word. Elias was looking at her, just looking with those yellow wolf's eyes. Egwene stepped back from the raw-boned man, and licked her lips and stepped back again. Before Elias turned away, she had backed all the way to Bella and scrambled up into Mare's back. As the man turned to lead them south, Perrin thought his grin was a good deal like a wolf's, too. Of course, suddenly as I'm reading that out loud for the first time, because I don't read out loud when I'm actually sitting down to read it, it occurs to me that that's not Perrin's grin, that's Elias's grin. I had thought, when I thought it was Perrin's grin, I thought this paragraph was more playful than it clearly is actually. Never mind. Retract. A bit scary, in fact. They're walking, they're traveling. It's noteworthy that Perrin has stopped having the bad dreams. That's really interesting. His dreams now involve a wolf being present in some form or another, but I'm seriously wondering, is it that they have sufficiently escaped the gaze of the Dark One that he is able to avoid the dreams? Is it that the Dark One has ruled him out? Is it that whatever old magic is in him that connects him to the wolves is protecting him? Is it that the wolves themselves are protecting him in some way? Some sort of shade of it's involving the old magic or the wolf magic. Is it the location, the forest? Is it that he is with the pack? Perhaps he is stronger with the pack than he is apart, sort of a thing. They spend 3 days journeying with Dapple, Hopper, and Wind, bringing them rabbits and squirrels. They get a pheasant at one point, I believe it is. And at one point, 3 mastiffs approach them threateningly. Perrin and Egwene are prepared to fight, but Elias lifts up one hand and he whistles and he lowers the hand, and the mastiffs turn into puppies, so to speak. They they don't literally turn into puppies, but they become adorable doggos. Elias explains that there are humans about. The Tuatha On, the traveling people, tinkers. Perrin hears that and he's very excited. Tinkers? I've always wanted to see the Tinkers. They camp across the river from Terran Ferry sometimes, but they don't come down into the 2 rivers as far as I know. I don't know why not. And then Egwene goes on a racist tirade. So whatever points she gathered before, suddenly gone down again. Essentially, they are thieves and baby stealers, and everyone knows it, but Elias disavows her of that notion fairly quickly. And I expect this kind of thing more from Nynaeve, I suppose, with her visceral dislike of Outlanders, but Egwene, who is so gung-ho on being an Aes Sedai, I would have expected to be a bit more inquisitive rather than prejudiced. Anyway, Elias says,
The Tinkers make me sick sometimes, but they don't steal any more than most folks. A good bit less than some I know.
Perrin asks if they're going to be camping with the Tinkers or apart. Elias would prefer to be apart, but ultimately they decide to rest with the Tinkers. Elias intelligently forewarns them,
Just don't pay any mind to what they say. A lot of foolishness. Most time the traveling people do things any which way, but there's times they set a store by formalities, so you do what I do and keep your secrets. No need to tell the world everything.
Good, forewarned caution. They walk in, and it is an incredibly colorful array of people. The big thing here is the colors and the clothing. Perrin has a memory of, I think it was Mistress Luhan going to the Tinkers to fix a cast iron pot or something, and she had said it was better than new, and it always rubbed Master Luhan the wrong way, that they had done better than he had or something to that effect. But all in all, the environment, the camp is lovely. Everyone is singing. There are kids playing with the dogs, and we get our introduction to the leader. Everyone quiets for a moment and stares at Elias, and an old gray man in a high-collared red coat and baggy bright green trousers comes up and says, "You are welcome to our fires. Do you know the song?"
Your welcome warms my spirit, Mahdi, as your fires warm the flesh, but I do not know the song.
And I had assumed that this was a cultural greeting of sorts. I wondered what the song is. I didn't immediately think it was like this big religious thing, which I think is, at the end of the day, what it is. I wondered if it was more like an exchange of information or something, like, have you heard the latest news, or something to that effect. The gray-haired man says, "Then we seek still. As it was, so shall it be, if we but remember, seek, and find. The meal is almost ready. Join us, please." Because I found it curious that Elias had said no. Not that I would expect him to know the song. I thought it was possibly like a, are you friend or foe type of a question, because I didn't know that they knew each other. So one of the possibilities that ran through my mind was like, well, if he doesn't know the song, that could mean that they are adversaries. So I was surprised when Elias responded with, "No, I don't." Elias lets the Emmons Fielders know that he knows the leader, the Mahdi. His name is Rain. Egwene asks what the song is, and Elias says,
That's why they travel, or so they say. They're looking for a song. That's what the Mahdi seeks. They say they lost it during the breaking of the world, and if they can find it again, the paradise of the Age of Legends will return. They don't even know what the song is. They claim they'll know it when they find it. They don't know how it's supposed to bring paradise either, but they've been looking near to 3,000 years, ever since the breaking. I expect they'll be looking until the wheel stops turning.
a very neat culture. I have opinions on pacifism, which we haven't gotten to yet in this chapter, but I like the idea of a group of nomadic people searching for a song. That's a very creative thing. And I will also say, at this point in time, Kitty and I have made it to, I think, chapter 58 in Way of Kings. So the Parshendi stuff is very much still a mystery to us. I just checked, we're on 59. And so I wondered here how much of the Parshendi and the Parshmans, where is their music mystery, was inspired by this here. I don't know if by the time this episode airs that mystery will be resolved or not, but the thought did come into my mind. Rain's wife comes out and she's a little bit cold and distant with Elias, but she's very motherly and affectionate with Egwene. They sit down to supper, and a young man about Perrin's age comes and joins them. We learn that he is the grandchild of Rain and Illa. Illa says, "Well, Aram, you have decided to eat with your old grandparents for a change, have you? I wonder why." And she looks over at Egwene. It's a humorous moment. And immediately I do not like this Aram guy. At all. Not at all. Pretty boy. He faces Egwene and says, "I am Aram," he told her in a low, confident voice. He no longer seemed aware that anyone was there except her. "I have waited for the first rose of spring, and now I find it at my grandfather's fire." Anyway. Perrin doesn't care for him either. In fact, there's a great passage. After a minute, Perrin knew who the fellow reminded him of. Will Alseen, who had all the girls staring and whispering behind his back whenever he came up from Devon Ride to Emmons Field. Will courted every girl in sight and managed to convince every one of them that he was just being polite to all the others. And clearly, in a way, I think this will stoke that desire for Perrin in Egwene. It'll help him identify it. I don't know that he had ever had, like, dedicated thoughts to Egwene, but I think this will certainly kick that off. That said, in what I interpret to be a moment of jealousy, Perrin says, "Those dogs of yours look as big as bears. I'm surprised you let the children play with them." Aram's smile slipped, and then looks at Perrin. And the challenge. I hate him. I hate him so much. "They will not harm you. They make a show to frighten away danger and warn us, but they are trained according to the way of the leaf." "The way of the leaf?" Egwene said. "What is that?" Aram explains, "The leaf lives its appointed time and does not struggle against the wind that carries it away. The life does no harm and finally falls to nourish new leaves. So it should be with all men and women." "But what does that mean?" Perrin said. Aram gave him an irritated glance, but it was Rain who answered. Oh, man. Aram getting angry. "It means that no man should harm another for any reason whatsoever. There's no excuse for violence. None. Not ever." Perrin asks the logical question, what if somebody attacks you? What if somebody hits you or tries to rob you or kill you? Rain goes on to say, more or less, that he would want to know why the person was doing such a thing, or he would run away. It's better to let the man have what he wants rather than to commit violence. And he even goes so far as to say that he would hope that the perpetrator was not harmed too greatly, which is overly charitable in my book. Rain goes on to explain that when a person does violence, they are also harming themselves. That's a very stoic ideal, I think. This idea that all you have is control over your own soul, and when you relinquish that control or do things that you know you shouldn't, you damage your soul in some way. Rain uses the metaphor of a tree and an axe. An axe can cause harm to the tree, but once enough trees are harmed, the axe will dull. So it may not seem like the axe is being harmed, but it is. Elias complains that Rain is trying to convert people, and Rain says that no, they They don't try to convert people. They answer questions, and it tends to be such that children are more curious than adults. And it's true that some people hear of their ways and choose to join them, but they don't go around trying to convert people. But it's because people join them that they have this reputation as stealing people, and that's why they're not allowed in towns, which isn't wholly dissimilar to the Aes Sedai's reputation as I'm experiencing it through Moraine, who will be in situations where bad things occur, or put in situations where they have to pick the lesser of two evils, and then somehow they get blamed for it, or associated with it to the point of having a negative reputation. Perrin explains his position, which I think is the strong position, is the correct position. I don't mean to offend you, Seeker, but, well, I don't look for violence. I don't think I've even wrestled anybody in years, except for feast day games. But if somebody hit me, I'd hit him back. If I didn't, I would just be encouraging him to think he could hit me whenever he wanted to. Some people think they can take advantage of others, and if you don't let them know they can't, they'll just go around bullying anybody weaker than they are. I think that's solid logic and fair. I think a person needs to do what they need to do to protect themselves. You don't want to be overly aggressive. You don't want to become the bully yourself. But as I've said in the Way of Kings stream, I think, particularly over the Lyran discussions, it's like, unless every single individual is a pacifist, pacifism just isn't really gonna work as well as one might hope. The world is gray. And then Aram, I really dislike this guy, takes a jab at Perrin. Some people, Aram said with a heavy sadness, can never overcome their basic instincts. He said it with a look at Perrin that made it clear he was not talking about the bullies Perrin spoke of. Dick. Perrin gets a good jab in response, though. I'll bet you get to run away a lot, Perrin said, and the young tinker's face tightened in a way that had nothing to do with the Way of the Leaf, which also invites in the point, if you don't fight with swords, you're gonna fight with words. There's no perfect peace. I think it's interesting, Egwene said, glaring at Perrin, to meet someone who doesn't believe his muscles can solve every problem. And I read that, especially the moment after where it says Aram's good spirits returned. When I took that as directed, it doesn't have to be directed at Perrin, but I took it as directed at Perrin. It's like, when has Perrin ever done that? When has Perrin ever acted in such a way that his muscles could solve every problem? Come to think of it, when has Rand ever either? So, Aram takes Egwene and shows the camp, and they go and eat with his mother. Perrin apologizes for the exchange, and Rain says, Aram is a troubled young man. He's a good boy, but sometimes I think he finds the Way of the Leaf a hard way. Some do, I fear. Please, my fire is yours. Please? Perrin asks the next logical question, which is good, and we are really getting a really nice glimpse into this culture. What happens to somebody who can't follow the way? A tinker, I mean. And Illa says, they leave us. The lost go to live in the villages. And I'm like, I have a hard time imagining that they would kick a person out, but I'm not ruling out the possibility that they do that. And in any case, I think that lends truth to the idea that, at least on a large scale, that kind of ideology isn't workable in the long term, because it proves the existence of people who are incapable of being pacifists. They have a meal, Perrin is dozing off, and Rain asks Elias if he had heard a story, a particularly interesting story. He says, it begins in the spring 2 years ago with a band of the people who were crossing the waste by the northern route. Perrin's eyes shot open. The waste? The Aiel waste? They were crossing the Aiel waste? Some people can enter the waste without being bothered, Elias said. Gleemen, peddlers, if they're honest. The Tuatha An cross the waste all the time. Merchants from Karheim used to, before the Tree and the Aiel War. Rain explains that the Aiel men avoid them, even though the Tinkers have tried to talk to them. None will come near them. He goes on to express that the Aiel men don't sing, which is very strange, or at least the men, rather. Not the Aiel men, but the Aiel men. Other than war chants and songs for the slain. So you really get the sense that the Aiel people are very battle-hardened, and the environment in which they grow are very inhospitable. The wastes. Perrin, this sort of reframes the courage of the Tinkers for Perrin. His initial impression was that they were cowards or fearful people because of their unwillingness to fight, but their willingness to travel into such inhospitable land must mean that they are not afraid all the time. Rain continues with his story. Young Aiel often travel into the Blight. Some of the young men go alone, thinking for some reason that they have been called to kill the Dark One. That tells me, especially considering what I know about Rand and his lineage, that the Aiel probably think that the Dragon Reborn will be Aiel. Most go in small groups to hunt Trollocs. 2 years ago, a band of the people crossing the waste about 100 miles south of the Blight found one of these groups. Young women, Ela put in, little more than girls. Perrin is surprised that Aiel ladies fight as well. Rain continues. The young women were all dead except one, and she was dying. She crawled to the wagons. It was clear she knew they were Tuatha On. Her loathing outweighed her pain, but she had a message so important to her that she must pass it on to someone, even us, before she died. Men went to see if they could help any of the others. There was a trail of her blood to follow, but all were dead, and so were 3 times their number in Trollocs. Painting a very high expectation of the battle prowess of the Aiel people. And this information even startles Elias, who is surprised to hear that they were 100 miles into the waste. He thinks that's impossible. That's what the Trollocs even call the waste, the dying grounds. They wouldn't even go that far if the Murdral were forcing them to. Perrin notes, You know an awful lot about Trollocs, Elias. And Elias brushes it off, insisting that Rain continue with the story. The Aiel girl refuses to let her wounds be tended to. But she seized the seeker of that band by his coat, and this is what she said, word for word. Leaf Blighter means to blind the eye of the world, Lost One. He means to slay the great serpent. Warn the people, Lost One. Sightburner comes. Tell them to stand ready for he who comes with the dawn. Tell them. And then she died. So, a couple of things there. He means to slay the great serpent. It becomes confirmed in a moment that the Great Serpent is the Wheel of Time when Elias later on says, Slay the Great Serpent, kill time itself? The way she talks about the Eye of the World, blind the Eye of the World, what we've gotten from Rand's dreams suggest a Thor's Hammer type thing, but then I wondered if he is in fact the Eye of the World, or the Eye of the World is another name for Dragon Reborn. I don't think that's as likely. I still lean toward the Thor's Hammer idea, but I'm open to the possibility. Rain explains that Leaf Blighter and Sightburner are Aiel names for the Dark One, and he extols how important it must have been to this girl to get that information out there, to make it known, even to people whom she and her kind hate, the Tinkers. It doesn't make sense to Elias, but Rain affirms she knew what she was saying. She was not rambling. There's an important exchange. When I saw you walking into our camp, I thought perhaps we would find the answer at last, since you were... Elias made a quick motion with his hand, and Rain changed what he had been going to say. Are a friend and know many strange things. I wondered if that meant that Elias is Aiel, which I think is possible. I don't know that I expect Perrin or Egwene to know what an Aiel looks like, again, particularly because I know something about Rand, but Elias does not know what this is about, and Perrin is very curious what Rain had been about to say. Egwin comes back, and we get a very, very sweet scene. I absolutely loved it. You've been gone a long time. Did you have fun? We ate with his mother, and then we danced and laughed. It seems like forever since I danced. He reminds me of Will Alcine, and I'm really glad he brings that up right then and there. Well, not right then and there, but that he brought it up at all. You always had sense enough not to let Will put you in his pocket. Aram is a gentle boy who is fun to be with. He makes me laugh. I'm sorry. I'm glad you had fun dancing with him. Abruptly, she flung her arms around him, weeping on his shirt. Awkwardly, he patted her hair. Rand would know what to do, he thought. I chuckled at that. There's no way Rand would know what to do. Rand puts his foot in his mouth around Egwin all the time. Rand had an easy way with girls, not like him, who never knew what to do or say. Excuse me, Perrin? Are we talking about the same Rand? I mean, yes, we know that Perrin does not have very high self-confidence. But still. I told you I'm sorry, Egwin. I really am glad you had fun dancing. Really. Tell me they're alive, she mumbled into his chest. What? She pushed back to arm's length, her hands on his arms, and looked up at him in the darkness. Rand and Matt, the others, tell me they are alive. He took a deep breath and looked around uncertainly. They are alive, he said finally. Good. She scrubbed at her cheeks with quick fingers. That is what I wanted to hear. Good night, Perrin. Sleep well. Standing on tiptoe, she brushed a kiss across his cheek and hurried past him before he could speak. He turned to watch her. Ela rose to meet her, and the two women went into the wagon talking quietly. Rand might understand it, he thought, but I don't. Perrin goes to sleep, hoping he won't dream of wolves, but he does. Yeah, Perrin and Rand are quite similar, I think. At least outwardly. It was an interesting chapter, an interesting culture, good information about the Aiel. That last moment was very, very sweet with Egwin. It's nice to see her be vulnerable, I think. Yeah, thank you all for tuning in. Have a great rest of your week, and I'll see you next time. Okay, thanks, bye.